Hello. You may notice this is a different location. I don't want to hear about it. Not going to talk about it. It's temporary. Welcome to my video. This is a production breakdown. As is tradition, I have not prepared at all. We're going to have a blast, is what I'm trying to say. It's going to be a raging time. We're talking about my song, The News. That's enough. How does a production breakdown video work? 30 minutes, that's an awfully long time, I guess. I don't know. It's quite simple, really. Basically, we're going to go through the news track by track. We're going to talk about the vocals first, then we're going to talk about the drums, then the bass, and then the synths. And the guitar, I'm just gonna tell you how I made it. It's gonna be a journey. Thank you for joining. The News. This is one of my favorites. Just got some real tasty stuff in it. This is a very old track. I saved it for the second to last. It covers some dark themes. It's one of the darkest songs I think I've ever written. But what can you do? It's got some super cool synth stuff, some super cool guitar stuff, and I'm excited to talk about it. And I hope you're excited to listen. Or, I don't know, maybe you stumbled upon this video by accident and you don't know what I'm talking about. In which case, all right, here we go. That's enough gum flapping from me. Let's get right into it. Vocals. I, kind of have a order of operations when it comes to producing my vocals. Record, comp, pitch correct, etc. I'm very meticulous about it, so that's kind of its own conversation. We start with these kind of radio-y affected vocals. Well, it looks like the end. They're getting bit crushed a little bit, a little lo-fi action, and then just reverb and EQ, nothing crazy. I'm in this little tiny room, and I'm very meekly proclaiming that this is the end. It looks like the end. My head's turned to mush, and my heart's giving in. Wow, there's some pretty cool delay thing on there. What am I doing? I've got nothing doing. There's the long delay. The vocals get sent to this delay, just for that last little quip, nothing to win. And, for the most part, the lead vocals on the song are just a very clean, present tone. Hey, we had a good run. It wasn't all bad, in fact sometimes it was fun. You know me, I like my vocals clean. Let's see if I don't think I'm doing anything crazy, just your run-of-the-mill EQ, compression, etc. Probably some slap delay, because that's just how I roll. Hey, yeah. We had a good run. It's not a party if you don't have slap delay. Hey. Then it switches back to the radio vocals there. Doom from the start. Out loud, good luck on Mars. It's kind of like a little mixing trick there, I think, leading into the drop, in this instance, the chorus, just, it kind of pulls back a little bit, so the drop has a bigger impact. All right, they're cruising here. This was doomed from the start. They pull back. Good luck on Mars. It just kind of, makes it hit a little harder. I think that's the main reason I did that, was just for the impact. But also the line is referring to departing from this world, so it is just kind of like I'm out, good luck on Mars. It's fun. We like to have fun here at Kaitun. I'm out, good luck on Mars. The chorus vocal sandwich, I like my chorus vocals to usually be a sandwich, if that makes sense. My, lead vocal track, I almost always make very crisp and clean and sits on top of everything, and then throw in a couple doubles or harmonies that, support it. So let's listen. I've got so much to lose. There's obviously the lead track here, I've got so much to lose. And then we get these background vocal tracks to come under it. I've got so much to lose. It's just two more layers, two more takes. One take's panned here, and one take's panned here. And they're both being sent to the same mixer track. It creates a very wide image. And they're both being bussed here, where they get a fruity fast distortion on them, which is, it's a risky move. Fruity fast distortion is, it's got an interesting timbre to it, but I thought it hit the spot here, and then I'm EQing it, taking out everything above, roughly 7K, I guess, there. So just very dirty, just really making these vocals more aggressive on the chorus. This is an aggressive song. Can't let you see through my boots. I think the effect that we get here is that the vocals still sound very clean and decipherable, but there's just that underlying angsty distortion, so it all just kind of melds together. And the distortion doesn't obscure the vocals, it just kind of slips in under them, Wave goodbye to all my friends. This is one of my favorite vocal performances, I think, on the record. I just really, really like how I sang this. I think I did a bang up job. It sounds pretty egotistical. I'm very pleased with how these vocals turned out. I've played all my cards, my spirits run thin, and I'm done biting the bullet. Pull the same stunt on the subsequent chorus with the pullback and then the bachui, the skablam afterwards. Just give it to me again. Oh. Kind of coming with this interrupted moment. It starts on the 2. We launch into the chorus on the 2, the downbeat, I believe is what that is called in music circles. Till you see me on the news. That is like the most important line in the whole song. It only occurs once, and it's like cut off by this guitar solo, which I think is just fantastic. I really beefed it up. I slapped another compressor on, like just for that line, another compressor kicks in to really squash it and make sure it all comes out. I wanted it to be decipherable if you're listening to it, right? I didn't want it to be incomprehensible. I just wanted to make sure you could make out that line if you wanted to, but I also didn't want it to be in your face because it's an uncomfortable line. Till you see me on the news. Jam out for guitar solo for like a minute. I will get to that eventually. We're talking about the vocals right now. I'm very proud of these ahs. I don't know where that came from. I remember just hearing it in my ear and I'm like, I'm gonna sit down and I'm just gonna record this really quick. Barbershop moment here. Oh, I've got so much to lose. It's not very audible, but right here, the chorus repeats here over this guitar solo in a very silly way. I ran the chorus vocals through Little Altar Boy and just kind of sequestered them up in the ether over this guitar solo. They're being pitched up in octave, among other effects being thrown on there. It's just, it's another little texture. And then this right here, this is pretty hard to make out. I took the "Till you see me on the news" line from earlier, the one that I said was the most important. I just time stretched the shit out of it, and it just kind of extends over this final burst. After I finished this song, I was like, I just want to get that line in there one more time, but there's no good place to put it. So I just stretched it over the expanse of the outro. All right, well, there you go. Those are the vocals for you. I'm done talking about the vocals. Let's talk about the drums. I feel like the drums on this song are just a delight. They're just delectable. So let's rap about it. So this may be obvious. I produce all my drums from, scratch right here in FL Studio. You could argue this is a pretty drum heavy song. I think the secret to making them sound good is bussing them and putting, the right kind of effects processing on the bus. So it, makes whatever you stick in that bus cohesive. I've talked about this before. All the drums get some interesting shit on them. There's slap delay as well as a healthy amount of distortion via the Radiator plugin from Soundtoys. I'm using a Sound Goodizer. Sound Goodizer is a ridiculous plugin. It's a ridiculous concept for a plugin. It's basically a multi-band compressor preset that just slap on stuff and it'll make it louder and sound good. I was trying to make these drums nasty. I was trying to blow them up, make them very dirty. So I was not shy about slapping some Sound Goodizer on them. I think it worked out pretty well. They've got lots of punch. For the most part, I'm just using random old samples. Like there's some Vengeance Essential House in here. That's one of the kick layers. And then there's, I don't know where this came from. It's a more acoustic sounding kick. Then a random brush sample, which you wouldn't expect to work, or I wouldn't, but it did. And then a hat sample from yet another location. These are drum samples that come with FL Studio. This is the FPC drum plugin. I'm using a preset called HQ Rock Kit. I've used this preset drum kit a dozen times. So old news if you keep up with me and my quirks. But yeah, it's all very copacetic. I've got so much to lose. Yeah, I throw in a lot of little variations in here just to keep it interesting, which I feel like is an organic thing to do with drums. For, the chorus sections, we get a cup ride, the cup part of the ride. I think to use this sound, like when you're trying to be really, I don't even know. I don't know how to explain it. I really like the cup. I like the cup ride. I just like it. It's kind of aggressive. And that's the theme with this track. And then this snare, if you're a slut for snares, this is a Vengeance Essential House 2 snare. It's from that pack. I've had it since like 2008. Still getting some use out of it. It has its own mixer channel where it gets EQ'd and compressed and then decapitated, which is a delightful Soundtoys distortion plugin. The snare is so important to get right. I'm so particular about snares. Like as I feel like a producer should be. You should be discerning about your snare. If you're gonna be discerning about one element of a drum kit, it had better be the snare or the kick. It depends on the genre, I think. The kick's just about as important as the snare, to me. It's my opinion. I mean, the kick, I'm not gonna not get my kick situated, but always gotta get the snare honed in just right. It's more of a science experiment making the snare work the way you want it to. With this song, I'm sure it was a lot of trial and error. I probably tried multiple snare samples and getting the EQ here is just like listening to it like on loop and then just dialing in tiny little things and adjustments until you think it's there. You don't solo it. You don't mix with stuff soloed because you're mixing for it to fit in the context of the whole track. So, here's a random unnecessary tidbit for you. To all my friends. I do this with snaps. I've done this a couple times. I don't know when the first time I did this is, but I always think to throw a reverb on a snap sample and I don't know, with Fruity Reverb specifically, and I'm sure other reverb plugins work this way, but you can tweak the diffusion here and it's got this wonderful visual representation of what you're doing. And Hexagon, that's one of the polygons anyway. It just kind of makes it sound more like a racquetball court. I think it's really cool when you got stereo on it as well. Stereoized, less diffused reverb. Sounds pretty neat to me. Get some funky stuff for this solo. I go pretty hammy. Get pretty hammy on the hats, on the hi-hats. I'm layering the Vengeance snare with a HQ Rock Kit snare, which has a more acoustic vibe. So it just gives the snare a little bit more, more to work with, a little more snappiness. And then obviously we've got this bonkers hi-hat pattern. Obviously, I did not physically play the drums. Anyway, yeah, that's what's going on here. I wrote the guitar solo, recorded that first, and then I produced the drums to match it, which was a fun experiment for me. I mean, I've gotten used to doing that at this point, but... If you're producing stuff like me and you're like doing all these instruments, you can't neglect an instrument. You think of like how a band plays. If this guitarist is slamming cock, if he's dropping trow and shredding on the guitar and the song's picking up that much, everyone's got to kind of react to it. All the instruments have to react to it. So the drums are reacting, the bass is reacting. We'll get to that next. But yeah, that's my advice here. It's time to beef me up, baby. You know what that means. This is one of my favorite drum patterns with the toms. It's like the it's like a Latin beat. The toms have their very own bus. And for this little section here, this effect rack turns on. Effect rack is like it just kind of houses all the Soundtoys plugins. I just would like to take this moment to reiterate, I'm not sponsored by Soundtoys. I rarely purchase plugins, and I bought the Soundtoys suite early on when I was producing this record, and it's like one of the first plugin suites I've bought in a long time, and it's so fucking good. So it's like the only thing that I've been using. So that's why I'm talking about it so much. Whatever. Talking about these drums. They get this distortion effect that turns on here, and then they're being phased out the ass, just so you know. They mean business. And then it turns off. I want you to know, it's okay to automate effects. I'm sure you already knew that, but if you were hesitant to, like I was before, or I used to like my effects to be static, and then I came around and started automating everything, and my production just went through the roof. So don't make the same mistake I did. Some very, very deliberate, fun little drum moments here. Get this outro. These full speed, heavy rock drums are like the hardest for me to do. Because it's really hard to make this sound good with drum samples, but if you got decent enough samples, they're mixed and bussed appropriately, and especially if you're just distorting the shit out of it, it can work. It can work well. Application of reverb is very important. You gotta put your fake drums in a fake room. That's something that I like to say, but it's true, You gotta put them in a fake room, and then do whatever you want to them. But first thing you should do is put them in a room with reverb, then go buck wild. All right, okay, that's drums. We have concluded our discussion of the drums. Bass, let's get into that, right? The bass is pretty fun for this too. It's my favorite bass guitar riff that I've written and played. I'm still pretty new to playing bass. Up until this album, I, only fucked around with synth bass because that's my it's my wheelhouse. But I wanted. I would just run into, roadblocks where like something just really called for actual bass guitar, just for whatever emotion or vibe I'm trying to convey. And I played guitar for a very long time. I'm like, I bet I can figure out bass well enough to track the stuff that I can hear in my head. Yeah, so I figured out how to play bass more or less for this album. In this song in particular, originally it was all synth bass, and I added the bass guitar later in. The song was always destined to be a drum and bass heavy song because like this is basically what I started out with when I started producing this before I'd even finished writing the song. So it was always meant to be this way. I love this bass riff here. I'm using an FL Studio synth called Harmless. It gets its own fruity fast distortion on there, and then it gets bit crushed because I just love doing that shit. And then there's that EQ. Nothing to say about that. And then micro shift. This was a very deliberate effect to put on there because usually it's like a tenet of mixing typically for bass to be mono, because when you stereoize bass, when it gets very wide, it kind of muddies the mix up, generally speaking. But I really wanted this bass to just take up more room, so I just added a dollop of, I added a dollop of micro shift in here, and I'm just now realizing that I picked a preset actually called Synth Bass Enhancer. I bet the fact that that's the name of a preset convinced me that it's okay to do this, and I'm very glad that I did. Synth bass gets blown even wider and more stereo-y for the verses here. It just kind of gets fatter. It's a little more imposing. And then obviously the chorus comes in with the actual bass guitar, which is just meatier and angrier. It's just kind of this trade-off. I'm playing the exact same melody just with another instrument, you know. It's being routed to a sidechain channel, so the kick still pushes it away, but that's the EQ on it. Wow. I don't know exactly why I decided to do a lot of this. Anyway, yeah, fruity fast distortion on that as well. A lot of fast distortion on this track. And fruity fast distortion has such a distinct sound to it. But that wasn't enough for the bass. I threw a decapitator on it after that. Thick, mild crunch. That's what I like. Just giving it more dirt. I don't know, I'm just kind of slapping stuff on here willy-nilly, trying to see what happens. Yet another EQ, and it looks like this, boosting the high mids even more, cutting out the treble. Yeah, this bass was clearly a product of trial and error. Not recording it, but mixing it. It needed to take up just this specific part of the mix. It had to occupy a very specific space. And I can see that's what I was struggling with here. And I always compress the fucking ass out of my bass, so that's why that looks like that. The, attack time on this compressor is relatively slow, for me. So you still get a little bit of that punch you still get a little bit of attack on there, but I always compress the fuck out of my bass because I like my bass to be loud. I used to produce more electronic dancey type music, and everybody knows how important bass is in that genre. Anyway, yeah, all that happens, but that's not all. It gets bussed to another mixer track here, so it basically duplicates the signal. And this extra layer is specifically to be widened, so I can take this bass melody that's being played and just build it up even more, layer it with another thing. And for this duplicated bass here, I take out everything up to about 1K and just give it a little more high mid action, and then it just gets stereoized pretty big time. So it makes the bass more three-dimensional, I guess is the way I would describe that. Let's listen to what this bass layer is doing. That's without the bass layer. Here is with that layer on. So yeah, obviously it's adding a substantial amount of texture. Anyway, there you go. I've got to adjust the blinds. Onward. Really taking my fucking time. We kind of alternate between the bass guitar and the synth bass. As the song progresses, the synth bass is for the verses and the bass guitar is for the choruses. It's that simple. It's just two different energies. For the solo section, nothing necessarily develops with the bass, but there's some fun riffs in here. So if I haven't already said this, I do my instruments one at a time. obviously that's the only way I could do it if I'm doing it all myself. And yeah, I had to go back into the bass here and re-record this section to kind of, you know, harmonize with the guitar solo and the drums. Then after that, it's just kind of old news, so to speak. See what I did there? Then yeah, that's it. That sums it up, I think, decently well. Bass in the bag. Well, what do you say? Shall we get into the synths? So be it. I'm a big fan of this pad that we start with. It's so clockwork orange to me. I'm using Harmer for this. Beautiful synth. If you never heard of it, you're missing out. This right here, def reverse these loops. That's the main synth loop, but I rendered it and then reversed it. This one. And then I flipped it, like I flipped the notes. So it basically played backwards. And then I rendered that with reverb on it. That's important. And then threw it back into FL Studio. Then reversed that rendered, you know, wave file. So it plays the same notes, but it's playing them backwards. I thought that was cool. Maybe you don't. I thought it was neat. If you're the type of person who's watched every single production breakdown video, you might be able to just guess off the top of your head what the name of the preset is for this synth. It is a preset that I fucking use on every song. It's Nexus, you guessed it, LD Chillin' House Lounge. This is my favorite Nexus preset. It is virtually the only thing I use Nexus for. I don't know what it is about this square. It's just a plucky square sound, and I always throw my own effects on it. So I think I just like squares, and Nexus has a convenient preset with just like a little bit of pitch wobble on it that I really like. Anyway, that's what this is. It's really cool. I kind of resent the fact most people are probably going to assume that I used an arpeggiator to create this melody. I did not. This is actually a melody that I played on guitar because I wrote the song on guitar and I decided I wanted this song to be more electronic. I literally just recreated it by hand. Watch. Let me show you. What fucking capo is this on? 4, I think so. That's enough. You get the point. Just had to get that out there. I'm not using a fucking arpeggiator. I never use arpeggiators. Throwing in a lot of reversed shit in here. This is yet another instance of LD Chillin' House Lounge, as I said earlier. Hey. The main synthy pluck stuff gets squanched. Throw a low pass on there, or cutoff. I dial the cutoff back, so it gets very underwatery, which is how I describe that sound. So it's still there, it's just very subdued. Another sound that I use over and over and over again. You know it, you love it. It's Microsoft GS Wavetable Synth. I'm using the orchestral harp preset. It's the fucking tits. I love it. It reminds me of RuneScape. And you know how I do. I always love to just pull that up and then throw some delay on it and some reverb, and you're good to go. You get some interesting stuff for the chorus here. Here. This is one of those sounds I just heard in my head, you know, and then wanted to make. I'm using 3X OSC. It's just a very simple FL Studio synth. It's just 3 oscillators. I'm just mixing a sine wave and is that a saw or a triangle? I think it's technically a triangle. Pitch down an octave, so it's lovely. Threw some wobble on there and the works, and it just it sounds like a robot like doing opera, you know. like a robot opera singer that screams when the chorus starts. This is happening in the background. This is Sakura. You can hear this all over the album as well. It's another native FL Studio synth. It's an image line synth. Playing all my cards, my spirits run thin. There are many melodies and patterns dueling with each other all throughout this song. Underneath all this noise on the solo, we get meat sauce just sort of supporting what's happening. That melody is actually what the original solo was on guitar. Eventually I swapped it out with the solo that we all know and love today. Felt like it needed to be angrier. We also have these pads that are new. Just crazy atmosphere stuff. Sakura and Omnisphere are my favorite plugins just to create or add bizarre, surreal sounding pads and atmosphere. Omnisphere here is just, it's some breathy kind of voice pad. Just to add some air. It's like there's this through line during the solo that's just this big exhale that never ends. It's one way to look at it. It's the way I like to look at it. This song is mostly the same 4 chords the whole time, but like at this section of the solo, we get one of the only chord changes, which is why I feel like it deserves so much spotlight. Yeah, this moment is the chord change, that's what I'm talking about. I can't tell you what chord that is, I just know that it is new at this point in the song. And that's it. Those are the synths. All that leaves is the guitar, and I did not deliberately save the guitar for last, but it feels appropriate because this is a guitar song. I feel like very heavy on the guitar. I'm crazy about this guitar solo. It's one of my faves. I can't wait to play it whenever shows are happening again. I don't know if you're watching this in the future when live events are kosher again. Anyway, the guitar. Several layers of guitar, all direct in, obviously. For starters, we got this boy. I'm using Guitar Rig. Looks like I'm using a preset called Oil Can Echo. I don't know what to say about that, but I'm just doing a, backwards strum, like an up strum. I do like creative panning on this track. It was all recorded with the same guitar, but I like each guitar track to have its own tone. Yeah, I mean, the secret to my guitar tone is pretty much Guitar Rig most of the time. Just a fantastic guitar effects processing plugin. The way I write guitar, I just kind of noodle around, like anyone does. Find a neat spots to add stuff in, like here. I keep it pretty bare on the verses, and honestly the choruses too. A bunch of phrases here that come and go. There's no consistent backing guitar in this track. It's just melodies that appear from different directions. Anyway, so the solo, the, effects processing on here, it's this whole ordeal. Honestly, the amount of effects that I put on this guitar is ridiculous. It looks simple at first. I'm using preset, of course, on Guitar Rig, focused solo. It's just your run-of-the-mill, distortion solo effect. And I just throw some reverb on there too. But then, where does it go from there? It gets bussed to 2 more tracks. It's basically 3 layers of effects, if that makes sense. There's this signal. It gets the Guitar Rig preset on it and the reverb, and then it goes to this channel where it gets, bit crushed and then a band EQ on it, kind of. And then it also gets sent here where it gets crystallized in a really, really weird, fucked up way. It's adding all these dissonant voices over it. It just makes it very upsetting to listen to. I mean, it would be more upsetting if I turned it up, which... It's like it's being refracted through some fucked up prison circus mirror maze thing. So that's under all the harmony. So together they make this. And then they get sent to their own bus way over here where they get compressed even more together. Yeah, that's just trying to keep it under control because it's bursting at the seams. This is the hardest I've ever gone on a guitar solo or like recording any guitar thing. That is this song in a nutshell, basically. It made me sweat while I was making it. I was just getting too emotionally wrapped up in it. I was just broiling with barely contained rage. I became a monster and just tried to make the nastiest, angriest thing that was still musically sound. I'm a big Muse fan, or I used to be a big Muse fan. Muse is one of my first favorite bands. They write incredible guitar solos. I love a good Muse guitar solo, and I think that is definitely an influence here. Everything from this point on in the song, as you probably know, it's very instrumental. The guitar kind of just takes over and plays out. There's just like another full minute of just guitar solos. There's this solo. It's pretty clean, very rhythmic. It's not very loud in the mix. It's kind of easy to overlook, but I'm also very proud of this solo. Like technically, it was a good one. The main guitar solo comes in and kind of steals the spotlight at the tail end here. Man, I wish I had a video of myself and I recorded that because I was going hard. I was going really hard. I was just annihilating my guitar. I'm surprised it did not break any strings, but alas I didn't. Felt it only appropriate to end with this kind of dilapidated wind down here. I'm pretty much just like fumbling with my guitar and like dragging the pick along the strings and all that shit. It's like a machine breaking down is the way I picture it. All right, we made it. That's everything I feel like talking about. If you want to talk about it more, hit me up with a question that I didn't cover because I will gladly answer it. I'm very accessible. I've only got one more of these left to do. It's Over the Mountain. So if you're going through these in order, I will see you for that one. It's been good. It's been juicy. Keep doing whatever you... Well, I'm not going to tell you to keep doing what you're doing because you might be doing something bad. Keep it locked. Stay safe. Don't drink bleach. You know what to do. I'll see you around. Toodaloo.